Thank you for coming today. Welcome to the 131st Sustainability Salon. We'll be 11 years old in January. And today's topic is alternatives to single-use plastic, especially packaging, but I'm sure we'll touch on other kinds of single-use plastics because there's so many of them that are so avoidable. And this is a collaborative event together with Pittsburghers Against Single-Use Plastic. And we have several of our steering committee members here. I'm one. Also, Diane Peterson is one. And also as alternatives to single-use plastic entrepreneur in her local business. And Becca Stallings is one, and she has another life as a sustainability, mostly but not exclusively sustainability blogger. The Earthlings Handbook, we can throw a link to that in the chat, and a link to Diane's store, which I guess your main web presence is on Facebook. Is that still correct, Diane? Okay.
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat for people. Thanks, Maren.
Yeah. Anytime anybody wants to say something, a comment, a question, make a point. If this is a much more free-form sustainability salon than usual, because it's kind of a brainstorming session, very participatory and multiple simultaneous speakers. We had a couple of other speakers in the can, or so I thought, but then things came up for each of them. And so Larissa, the proprietress of the Refillery, cannot be here with us, but I can share more about that. It's a local business here in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh, that has many household and body substances that you can refill a bottle from their big containers, and in many cases they are locally made. So that's a wonderful local option for avoiding single-use packaging. They even have sort of a jar share shelf. So if you've got extra jars, bring them in and people will take home laundry soap or shampoo or whatever in them. And I have some slides if we do have time. This is open-ended brainstorming session. So if there is time, I have some slides all about the Refillery. And also I was going to have Daphne Wu-Yarn-Chan, who is, I think, the newest professor in chemical engineering at Carnegie Mellon University, and is a polymer chemist who is working on what are called sustainable polymers, although I usually take a critical view of the use of the term sustainable as an achieved thing, but they are working toward more sustainable polymers as, and I guess I'll make them big here because I'm talking, and I may, what I might do is put all of the PASUP people and then bring other people up as they want to participate. Does that make sense to everybody? So let me bring up the other folks. We'll bring Diane, who may or may not be on screen. Add. Why can't I add spotlight? Can I add spotlight? This is terrible. Usually I can. Oh, I can't add Diane as a spotlight because she's off screen, but I'll try to pay attention to whether she's on screen, and when she is with us, I'll add her in. So what was I saying? Oh, yes. Daphne is working on polymers from proteins instead of sugars. Corn is often used for a biodegradable / compostable in an industrial setting plastic. We see plastic cups and plastic bags made from corn, but corn itself Well, first off, we should be growing corn for food where we're growing it. And second of all, as a crop, it's incredibly energy intensive. It uses a lot of fossil energy. It causes land degradation if you're growing it where you didn't need to grow a crop. So other things that are like Daphne's working on a plastic-like material made out of whey. The liquid that comes when you make yogurt, and like there's a huge industry of Greek style yogurt where they're basically straining yogurt to make it thicker because people like that, and then they have a ton of whey. What are they going to do with it? So she's experimenting with using proteins instead of sugars or carbohydrates in general to as a base for plastic-like materials or non-petrochemical plastics. And because there's often, when we talk about this, people often raise the question of what about non-fossil plastics? And so this research is in fairly early stages, but Daphne kindly spent quite a while with me a couple days ago. And so I may be able to answer some questions that people have as they come up. And I even have some slides from her and some slides from the Refillery. So it's going to be the PASUP gang plus ancillary materials that I brought together as needed. So would either of you like to start us off? I know, Becca, you had some very specific ideas.
Yeah, I have some packages collected here next to me to talk about. So we'll start with the annoying multi-layered plastic pouch. These are like, there are more of them every year. More products are in these pouches that have a sharp edge. You can cut yourself on this. If you're me, I'm one of these people who's kind of clumsy, and I'm always getting little cuts on my knuckles and stuff from these. They've got a pleated bottom and a zip top. And in order to use the zip top, you have to rip some kind of strip off the top. And sometimes it rips the right amount and sometimes it doesn't. And usually it won't come off at the end, and you have to get the scissors, and there's this big deal getting into the stupid package, and then you have to try to reseal the thing. So I've already been infuriated with these for years. And then this summer I hurt my thumb. And when you only have one opposable thumb, mine works on my left hand, and it's just recently, I've just recently started being able to do this again with my right hand. You need two hands with opposable thumbs to open or close this type of package. So I tend to put things that come in that package in another container that's easier to deal with. And then I have the pouch. They're not recyclable. There's, you know, maybe they can be burned for energy, and that's about it. And everything comes in there. So there's raisins, there's this laundry powder, Epsom salt is the other thing that was in my pantry. And I've had this Epsom salt for a while, and now in this inadequate package, it's hard as a rock. If I want to get any out of this, I'm going to have to like bang it against the floor to loosen it and get it out. Then there's the similar pouch that a lot of refill products come in. So this is dish detergent. There is a place that says they're going to take these back for recycling. I don't know if it's worth saving them up and sending them in. But meanwhile, I've been looking for alternatives. So one alternative I have found is the dish detergent that comes in an aluminum bottle, which is recyclable anywhere aluminum cans are recyclable. This isn't a squirt bottle. You have to refill some squirt bottle, plastic squirt bottle that you already have, or Grove Collaborative sells a glass pump top bottle if you want to use that kind of bottle for your dish detergent. So it's a good alternative in a way. It's more expensive than a lot of the dish detergents on the market at this point, but it is plant-based and is now being sold at CVS. I just noticed last week. It's been at Target for a while and on the Grove app. So that's something. But like the raisins, I've been buying these because I used to get my raisins at the food co-op, and they had a bulk bin of raisins, and I would scoop them into my reused peanut butter jar or something. In the pandemic, they started selling plastic bags of raisins that they've pre-bagged for you, and they sell by weight, and they have a label on them, and the label has come off of some kind of plastic sheet that they had to peel it off of. And I understand that the raisin bin wasn't very sanitary and that people eat raisins at room temperature typically. And so you're not killing the germs that might be on your raisins. But I can't stand buying those tiny little bags. And so I've been buying the bigger bags because from Costco, especially when they're on sale, it's a lot cheaper. But it's the stupid pouch. So
It is, yeah, I'm unclear. One thing is that the bags that the raisins come in at the co-op, which I could grab one of over there, are eminently reusable, but you can go through a lot of them. There is also a local business based up in Saxonburg called Frankfurt Farms that is they're a farm and grain mill, but they're also an organic and natural foods wholesaler. And I would be happy to hook anyone up with them. I order periodically, and you could actually order and have it delivered to my house and not have to meet the delivery minimum. And from them, you can get 5-pound containers of organic raisins made by Victor. In fact, that's how I first connected with them, because before we moved to Pittsburgh in 2000, we were visiting an old friend who lived outside of Pittsburgh, and on their table was a purple box of Victor raisins that I remembered from our pre-order bulk co-op in Boston. And if it's still the way it was, it is in a plastic bag inside a cardboard box. It's about yay big, and it contains 5 pounds, and you can rebag it yourself. Or I actually put my raisins in. I have been getting the ones from the co-op because I sometimes have too much backstock of food in the basement. So lately I've gotten it from the co-op, usually when it's on sale, and reusing the bags. But the single big bag that's in the Victor box would be more reusable. I mean, I have been reusing plastic bags since forever. My mother
yes.
washed and
I do a lot of reusing plastic
Yeah.
bags too, but you do have to think about how the plastic breaks down over time, and especially if you're using some friction to wash it to get the raisin sticky off.
Mhm.
I do want to exactly say what you're saying, Becca, and that I hear all it. So I'm sorry, did you cut you off mid-sentence? I did. Finish your sentence. No, okay.
I don't know what it was, so go ahead.
Sorry. So I do have people ask me all the time, like, what is the most environmentally sound packaging? And, what is the most environmentally sound is what you already have that you can refill. When they have what kind of bag? Is it the plastic bag? Is it the polyester bag? Whatever you already own and you reuse is the most environmentally sound. But the caveat of that is, are you talking to me about also your personal health? Because what is healthy for the environment may not be what's healthiest for you. So when washing and reusing those Ziploc baggies, great for the environment, really sucks for you personally. So I would never advocate for people to reuse those. I wouldn't want you to use those in the first place. And you put anything in there, if you're going to put a food item in there that has any liquid in there, any acidity, any tomato sauce, just don't. So anyway, yeah, that's just
There is some question about how much worse reusing plastic is than using new plastic every time for your food. But yeah, plastic on food is bad, and we should try to avoid it. So speaking of the raisins that come in a large quantity in a plastic bag in a cardboard box, that brings me neatly to one of my other types of package here, the large package of cereal. My family eats several kinds of cereal, and the one I was intending to showcase is Cheerios, but we're actually almost out of Cheerios, so I didn't have an outer package to show you. So this is the Costco pack of Raisin Bran, and you get a cardboard box, which is recyclable at curbside, but you got to think about the energy that went into producing this glossy, full color cardboard box, which to me is like, this is the box that I recognize in the store, and that is its only function. And you know, when I get home, it holds the bags of cereal until we're ready to put them in the container that we actually serve the cereal out of, because this box it weighs almost 5 pounds. It's huge. So we can't keep this up on top of the refrigerator. Inside, it has 2 bags of cereal. Here I have a partly full one and a full one. And the reason there are 2 bags is that this is an ineffective packaging method. Once you've opened it, the cereal begins to go stale. You can be super careful about rolling up the top of the bag. You can even put a clip on it, but the cereal will eventually go stale faster once the package is opened. So it kind of just sucks, but this is the way you get cereal, unless you can get your cereal in bulk at the co-op and you can afford to pay what they charge for the cereals that are in the bulk bins there. Those are like our special treat
They're
granolas.
the granolas. Yeah. I
and
consider that as a garnish on cereal.
Yeah, they don't have Raisin Bran, they don't have Cheerios in bulk, they don't have you know, flake cereals, they only have granola.
They do.
But what we end up storing it in is this kind of a canister, which has a really good sealing top that pops. But this is made of polycarbonate, and I'm not thrilled with that. I know that polycarbonate leaches more chemicals than some of the other plastics, but it's really good at keeping the cereal fresh, and it's lightweight, and we take it down from the fridge.
Mhm.
And so we're using the package that it comes in only to store the extra in the pantry. And then it goes into a different, more practical storage container in the home. If we could just take that container to the store and fill it from a bulk bin, I would definitely be doing that. But at least
there is at the food co-op, they have, and through Frankfurt, you can get by the case, you can dispense with the outer box. That's all color printed and everything. They Nature's Path, I believe, is the brand, and they have 2-pound bags that seem to work just fine. Sometimes we put it in a canister, but that is more plastic. So we usually just roll it up because it'll fit better in the drawer, because we put our things in the drawer as opposed to on top of the fridge. On top of the fridge is not actually a great place to store food because it tends to be warm. Although I know it's a convenient spot in many houses. So
yeah,
you do what you can.
My kitchen is one of those built in 1921 when they were all about an efficient footprint in the kitchen. It's 9 feet by 10. And so, yeah, on top of the refrigerator is where we keep all the cereal and the wok and the slow cooker and the big mixing bowls. All of those things on top of the refrigerator, you have to get at it from different angles.
And
yeah. Anyway, the one saving grace of the giant box of cereal, especially Cheerios, is this bag, which folds flat. You could roll it up in the drawer. This is an excellent freezer bag, but the one from Giant Cheerios is big enough for a pie pan or a dinner plate. And so this is what I reuse to carry my dishes to a picnic and bring the dirty dishes home. And when I make pie and we haven't finished it and I'm going to leave it on the counter or put it in the fridge, I slide it into one of these bags and fold the end over. So they're good for that. But, you know, if I didn't have this garbage constantly pouring into my life, I would find something else for this purpose. I know I would.
It's also worth noting, though, that if you're not comfortable reusing that type of plastic, like Diane said, you know, they do break down the more you use them and the more you clean them, like Becca said. Those types of plastic bags, that sort of like waxy freezer bag that comes in the cereal boxes and comes in the cracker boxes and things like that, that type of plastic bag can be recycled with the places that take the plastic shopping bags. So they can be put in
Yeah.
those places to return. and
Yeah, the
recycle.
bin outside Giant Eagle or Target does accept this kind of bag, although it doesn't have a chasing number symbol on it, it is recyclable. And so, yeah, I usually will reuse one until it's looking worn in any way or has food stuck on it. And then I get off the stuck on food and I go ahead and put it in the recycling bag.
Yeah, it does make a difference, as Diane said, anything wet, anything acidic. I think also anything greasy.
Or
That's
hot.
not what I use plastic bags for. I use glass jars or a glass casserole dish
Yes.
to store anything like that. Bread or cereal, dry cereal, or vegetables that will perish if they get too dried out, are things that I will use plastic bags for.
Yeah.
And they will be I don't buy plastic bags, so I just reuse
And
plastic
although
bags that
I've
come my
read
way.
about how to use glass jars as freezer containers, I can't bear it myself. I don't have enough room. I mean, I don't have a chest freezer. I only have the freezer over the refrigerator. And glass containers being rigid just take up more space. I also have a real problem with cold hands. And so taking a glass container out of the freezer with pot holders is difficult. And so I in the summer when vegetables are cheap and I get a farm share, then if we can't use all of something, I shred it up and pack it into one of these Cheerios bags and roll it over and put a rubber band and stick that in the freezer. And
So
yeah,
conveniently,
for my
conveniently, I just pulled this off my wall. So this is, you know, if you have a problem with
the
having
stash.
glass in your freezer, like we use these a lot in our freezer and refrigerator, and then it's kind of like a baggie because it can conform to different sizes. Yeah, so that works.
Yes, those
And
are silicone.
And you know, yeah, those are
They
silicone.
appear to be plastic, but they're actually silicone. right?
Exactly. And you know, it's kind of funny is that, you know, people often, I'm hearing this a lot, even when I go to a event where we have so-called experts, talking about plastics. And then they actually said, well, plastic and silicone is the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, absolutely not. They're not the same thing. So actually silicone is more closely related to glass than it is plastic because it's made out of silica sand. But anyway, so this is what I always say to people is know what you're using, know what it's made of. Because just like what Donica said, I mean, plastic is not plastic. I mean, there's different types of it. Things that look like plastic are not. And it really matters. And like Karen said, you know, if you're going to use a plastic bag and reuse it, you want to put your cereal in it, that's much better than putting your tomato paste in it. You know,
Yeah.
so really need to know your sources and what your materials rather.
Yeah, and silicone, I'm not entirely convinced on silicone because if you melt sand, you get glass. You don't get something soft and pliable like rubber. So what kind of plasticizers they use and whether those may be endocrine disruptors, et cetera, I haven't heard authoritative information on.
Yeah, and that's
Thus
the
far.
thing too, because not all silicone.
But I
is the
do
same.
use some silicone things, like nothing to beat a silicone rubber scraper.
Yeah.
But they
are a
used to have
few-
them made of rubber, but they don't have them
Yeah.
anymore because silicone is
Yeah.
cheaper.
Right.
There
So
are a
this-
few brands that are sort of certified in terms of what fillers they're using. It's like you said, Marion, like it is silicone, it is glass, but it's also something else. There has to be something else. It's like when you see dishware that looks like plastic, but it's made of bamboo. It's bamboo and something else. There is a
And a
binder,
resin.
there's a filler, there's something that it's made out of. So if you're going to use one of those products that, like Diane said, looks like plastic, claims to not be plastic, you need to, you know, if you are really going to spend the time on investigating that for your own health, look into the company that makes it, look into what they're using to make it. But there are a few brands out there, and I'll try to find them in just a moment. I know of at least one
Great.
that
Well-
have like some information available about what are the fillers that they're using and what can they do to a human body?
Yeah. And that's, you know, and the thing is, and actually you can look, and usually they will say, like, if it's premium silicone, that's usually a pretty good sign. But, you know, and another really simple sign is if you're buying something silicone and it's super cheap, yeah, you know, it has a pretty good chance that there's plastic in it. And like you said, Donica, also in the bamboo plates, it's really interesting because me as a store, you know, I kind of drive my sources crazy because I want to talk to the boss. I want to know, you know, what's the binder, what they're doing. And a lot of times when I'm talking to the salesperson who wants to just get the stuff in my store, they don't know. So it's like, I want to know who makes your stuff. How are, you know, how are you treating the people? What are you putting in this stuff? So you're absolutely right. And it's really tough for the consumer. So, you know, you really have to either, you know, spend some time yourself getting that information or really trust who you're buying it from. And if it's really cheap, it's probably really cheap. Yeah. Sorry, Becca, take it back away.
Yeah, well, Maren was talking about glass jars for reuse, and I'm very enthusiastic about glass jars. I often will buy a spice just once to get the bottle that has the label, and then I take it back to the co-op and refill this bottle. And sometimes the co-op's price on the spice will be like 1/10 the supermarket price. Other times it's more like half, but it's still a substantial savings.
Just in general, bulk, buying in bulk,
Yeah.
anything and taking,
Buying in bulk for
this,
most things is going to be a savings, but the nice thing about buying from bulk bins into your own container, like at the co-op or at the Refillery, is that you only have to buy the amount you want. Whereas often bulk buying means you have to buy 5 pounds or 10 gallons or something. I use a lot of these jars, the Smucker's napkin. And my family eats a lot of peanut butter. So we try to buy just this brand to get the glass jars, because peanut butter, being high in fat, is one of those foods that can be leaching the chemicals out of the plastic more than other foods do. So then I repurpose the jars for everything, lentils and pasta and stuff, and putting away leftovers in the refrigerator too. If I've made soup, I'm pouring it off into jars and putting it in the fridge, and you could reuse them for so long. I'm keeping some of my food now in jars from Maxwell House Instant Coffee, which is the coffee that I used to drink at work like 20 years ago. I haven't bought any since then, so it must be those same jars. Those have plastic lids, but a lot of my jars, like peanut butter jars, have these metal lids with a ring of stuff in the inside. So I'm glad that I was researching an article on bulk food purchasing and what to keep your bulk food in a few years ago, because that gave me an excuse to look up what is that stuff inside the jar lid. It's called plastisol. It is a plastic. There's only a very small amount of it there, and it's really stable. It doesn't leach stuff much, and it holds up well in high temperatures. So I don't put my jar lids through the dishwasher because they flip upside down and get full of dirty water. But putting them in the dishwasher apparently is okay and doesn't break down the plastisol. So I consider it fairly safe. And we had a recycling guy who was at a PASUP meeting before the pandemic, like 3 years ago, who was telling us that the metal jar lids are recyclable, that the plastisol melts off really easily in the recycling process. And so they can recycle the lids where they have the right facilities to do that.
which isn't unfortunately the city recycling stream,
Right.
because
The
lids
city
are too little and clog things up. There is a metals recycling dumpster at Construction Junction, which is basically you're donating them the recycling value of the stuff, which is a fine thing. They do like it if you ask permission, so that they tell you basically it has to be mostly metal. And so, you know, I asked once, and I keep metal wires, anything of metal, and I put it in there. Another thing about canning jar lids in particular is that a regular mouth canning jar lid I was not nearly as well prepared as Becca with all my items in hand, but a regular mouth canning jar lid is the best tool for scraping out the inside of a pumpkin when you're
Oh.
carving pumpkins.
Okay.
The
good to know.
little edge, well, I have my air things going now, so I'll grab one. The little edge just gives you the perfect scraperizer.
That's better choice than an expired gift card, which is something that I saw recommended online
Yeah,
this year.
I can't
save your expired
imagine
gift Scrape out your jack-o'-lantern.
the number of spoons that have been destroyed by people using them. So this is a regular mouth. This is a wide mouth. And I use both on jars, but only this one for the pumpkins. The curvatures, this one is too big and it just bends. But this one, it's like, it's the perfect. That's one of my little gospels that I share with people.
Yes.
It's not the right time
Well,
of year now.
Speaking of reusing plastic to hold relatively inert foods that aren't going to
Mhm.
leach out of the plastic, this is the jar from coconut oil. And
Mhm.
I have real misgivings about buying coconut oil in a plastic jar. I would rather buy the glass jar, but often the bulk price of the plastic jar will sway me. I do really like coconut oil for greasing baking pans. So I have my pasta in here. I buy the 5-pound bag of pasta from Gordon Food Service and immediately put it in jars to protect it from mice in the pantry, just in case we ever have a terrible mouse invasion like we did 10 years ago. Glass jars are better. It's hard to find big glass jars, and I go through a lot of pasta. But the plastic jars, at least with the screw top lid, it seemed that the mice could not get into. We had some of those that pretzels come in with the lid that just snaps on,
Mhm.
and mice can chew that off and get in the jar.
Mhm. There
yeah.
are half-gallon mason jars,
Mhm.
which this one has cat food in it. We get the cat food in a big bag that I then try to reuse for sharp
Yeah.
trash in the
So
workshop.
whenever possible, I'm trying to get
Yeah.
something in a package that is not plastic and either reusable or
Mhm.
recyclable. So the glass peanut butter jars are a great example, and sometimes other
Mhm.
things like salsa or spaghetti sauce come in really nice
Mhm.
glass jars. And then here's some packages that are entirely plastic free and recyclable. These are laundry detergent strips. I'm
Mhm.
seeing questions lately about whether the
Yes.
stuff that the strips is made of is really environmentally efficient. This is a weird stuff, PLA, I think. But for now, I have a bunch of these strips, and all of the brands I have seen come in a totally cardboard package. The problem is this is a product that dissolves on contact with water. So the package is not sufficient to protect the product if it might get wet. If you're keeping it in, like if it's a dish product, you're keeping it in the cabinet under the sink. If you're keeping it on top of the dryer in the laundry room in between the washing machine and the laundry sink, it can get wet. So I also have these laundry detergent tablets, which do not have the PLA issue, but they only are available in unscented.
Mhm.
They come in the bag, which does break down in the home compost, even though it has a silvery lining. I don't know what this is, but it breaks down. I've seen it. So I have
PLA.
been keeping these boxes that salad comes in. And
I occasionally use them for, a little mini window box for lettuce in the winter. PLA, by the way, is polylactic acid, corn plastic, and it's chemically the same as commercial plastics, like polyethylene terephthalate, but it comes from fermentation. And
What again? Poly what?
polylactic acid
Okay.
is what PLA is. So yeah, those laundry strips, I've tried to figure out how they can be so much more weight efficient than powders.
Well,
And
detergent,
like-
the detergent weighs less than the amount of powder you would use by a little bit. It's mostly about the volume. They get squished down compared to the amount of powder you would put in one load.
well,
of
they're
laundry.
always comparing them against liquids.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a
Liquid
lot of
laundry
brands now,
become a lot more popular than powder in the last
which
20
I
years
haven't-
or so.
it's like people like lugging stuff around and shipping water. I don't get it,
I
but I can't figure out
people
why
like
the
Programs of powdered laundry detergent in their laundry when they take it out of the washing machine. That with some washing machines, you really have that problem, and the liquids dissolve and disperse better in the
Yeah.
water.
Well, I've been experimenting with something they use in Japan, and unfortunately I haven't unpacked it yet because we just moved in, but it's magnesium in this little mesh pillow kind of thing. And it's really good at removing odors. And I'm also careful about the kinds of fabrics I get, because if you wear plastic, you're going to stink. You know, that people don't realize polyester is plastic. So many people don't. I wear mostly merino wool, and some people say that's good, and some people say that's bad, but it's comfortable, and I don't have to wash it as often. So it's more
Durable.
than just whether or not the animal makes methane. But these magnesium things have been good. However, I have to use like a little soap bar kind of thing, laundry stain remover that comes packed in cardboard. It's called Bunch of Farmers. And I have to use that for stain removal. But most of my stuff is stained. It just gets stinky over time.
Yeah.
So
So it's interesting.
really
So I
good
love
for
the way you brought up the plastic clothes, because I think a lot of people, that's another thing, is like check your materials, because we're putting a lot of energy talking about containers and what our food is in, and and what we're washing our clothes with and all of this. And what people often don't realize is that, yes, it's really important what your food is stored in, but it's also really important what you're coming in contact with. And we are, like I was just on the phone, often in contact with this thing, and we're often in contact with other, my computer, which has a lot of plastic. So every time plastic hits this, you're consuming it right into your body. So, and what are we mostly covered with? Clothing, right? And people are like, polyester. I think most people know polyester is plastic, but like nylon and acetate and rayon and all these, there's so many different types.
Microfiber. Doesn't that sound?
Oh, yeah.
The thing that most appalled me, that seemed like the biggest blind spot in discussions of cloth diapers when my kids were babies, people were buying these microfiber soakers for the inside of the cloth diaper, and they were going to put this microfiber of unknown fiber content right up against their newborn's genitals. And why? Have you thought about this?
No, they haven't.
And all the polymer gels that soak up all the pee.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, those turned out to be quite dangerous, actually.
But here we go again. It's always a thing of plastic. I mean, I was just saying this to a customer today. Plastic is marvelous because you can make it very rigid to very soft and flexible. You can make it clear. You can mold it to any shape. You can make it any size, and it's really cheap. It's an amazing product. But the same things that make it amazing make it horrific, because it can be made into anything, any size, never goes away, is very durable. So it's horrific at the same time. So, we're again exchanging. This is very convenient. It's very convenient to have something very thin that's very absorbent, but you're paying for that convenience dearly. And when we didn't know better, then it was just a joy to have this convenience. But now we know better. We have to stop the convenience and go back to some older ways.
That goes to something that Yvonne said earlier in the chat, which is that for the people who are producing these products, sustainability is not a priority. It's in many of these cases, right? It's considered an afterthought for a lot of these. And then on the other end of things, on the consumer end of things, like Becca was talking about, we have accessibility, right? Like I felt very lucky that I found out that Aldi sells coconut oil in glass jars, but they're not very big glass jars. So if I went through a lot of coconut oil, I'd be buying a lot of it from Aldi. I don't know how their bulk price stacks up against the size of the jars that Becca's buying, even though those are plastic, and we can find ways around that. But the fact remains that just, not everybody has, one, the spare income to be buying the products in the nicer, healthier packaging, and also just the time to drive to 5 different stores because I figured out which ones of them sell things in glass instead of plastic.
Yeah,
it's
it
just not
all needs to
feasible.
be more accessible to the ordinary consumer. And so having really started trying hard in the late 90s to buy better products and better packaging for my home. At that point, I had just enough savings that I didn't necessarily have to live by a strict monthly budget. And so if I was going to buy a year's worth of laundry detergent at once, I could do that. And it's really been a thrill to me over the last 25 years to see these products become more available. At first, I was like writing off in response to a classified ad in Mother Jones in order to get a catalog to order things by mail. And now I can buy those things at Target and Costco and so forth. So it's a relief to see more of these things coming out, but all of this is happening much too slowly for the problems that we're facing. And it's really depressing to me that there are still environmentally friendly products that are packaged in bad packages. I mean, those raisins are organic, but they're in a plastic pouch.
And Mecca, that's something you said earlier that I wanted to jump into, because this drives me crazy every time I go grocery shopping. And this is it. So just like Donica said, so do I go out to Aldi's? Do I go out to Costco's? Do I go co-op? It's like, so, and how environmentally friendly is that to be traveling all around the town to get one item here, one item there, one item, the next thing. So, it costs a lot of time and energy in order for me to plan where I'm going to go. And not everyone has that luxury. And I don't have that luxury, but this is crazy. And I've often stood in a store and said to the employee, okay, I want potatoes, but I can either buy these potatoes that are organic and plastic or non-organic in bulk. I cannot buy bulk potatoes, not in plastic.
Go to the food co-op.
Yeah, but that's like I said, but if I'm going to go all
store
for that one, yeah, it's a different store. So my point is that I hear all of us, and I'm reading whatever chat I can get on while I'm being interrupted by my husband taking care of the kid.
A couple things.
Is we need to always talk to people in the store, and when you can, in the manager, and when you can, write a letter, because they do listen. I mean, in my store, for 2 decades, I've had a store. And when I first opened, many of my toys just came in cardboard boxes. Those same exact games that I bought 20 years ago, just in cardboard, now come shrink wrapped in plastic. And I asked them, I know, this is a recent change. And so I asked them, what's going on? And they said, and I think this is really fascinating, anyway, that because of consumer demand, they're adding the plastic wrap. We added the plastic wrap. So now we need to unadd it. We need to complain and say, we don't want to buy this product anymore because it's in plastic. So I was shocked to hear that we've added the plastic. I'm thinking we're going to subtracting it, but we're adding it. So speak out. It makes a difference. This huge company added plastic because of our response.
Yes. On the other hand, another product I want to mention that you can buy in minimal, completely recyclable packaging is this all-purpose cleaner concentrate. This cardboard box contains 2 bottles. This one I have only has 1 bottle in it now. And each bottle you pour into your 1-quart spray bottle and fill it up the rest of the way with tap water. And then you have a quart of spray cleaner and a little recyclable glass bottle. Or if you have a non-food use for a little glass bottle, now you have this really cute little glass bottle. So I keep looking for uses for them, and I don't have too many uses for tiny bottles, but I'm very happy that these are available instead of, you know, buying a quart of ready to use cleaner where the water has been trucked across the country to the store and I have to bring it home from the store. And I'm glad this alternative exists now, finally.
And you know, it's
So-
funny when you're talking about glass bottles, is that when I finish off a spice, I tend to just keep the bottle. I know I can recycle the glass, but I just keep a few of them. And I just had to pack up some medicine for my daughter. And it's like, okay, I don't want to give her the whole thing. Hey, there's one of those little glass bottles comes in handy. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
a few around, it's nice because like I said, if you buy something in bulk and you want to switch it off, it's nice to put it in glass or something that's more eco-friendly for us, more body friendly, health friendly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We did have
Um,
someone asking Becca in the chat what the
Yeah.
brand name of that cleaner
Okay,
concentrate
yes,
was.
that is Grove brand. It's at Target and CVS, and grove.co is their website. They have an app that you can order from. So it's pretty widely available now.
Mhm. There's quite a bit of action in the chat, and we meant for this to be very interactive and participatory. So I want to bring out some of those questions and points and observations. Fred asks, why can't our country get back to recycling glass instead of plastics? Glass is limited in use, but it could be used in packaging particular materials and recycled. I noted that a typical argument on glass is that it's kind of heavy for transport. So that is taking energy. And it does also take energy glass is infinitely recyclable. That's one of the great, both glass and aluminum, and I think steel are infinitely recyclable, I guess until the steel turns into rust, but which is something that would start fresh on each iteration of it. I don't think that more recycling of steel makes it more rusty or anything like that. But glass can be refilled, and the question is whether the energy that is used in transporting the glass, both in the back shipment to wherever it's being filled and the forward shipment of the product in glass, whether the extra energy that is used for the glass transport is anything like the amount that would be required to recycle the glass. And there's an energy cost to recycling glass and to transporting glass. There's other costs that become relevant with plastic. But the energy is very likely fossil energy that is being used on glass recycling and at this point on glass shipping. But there's other costs that we know. And we know that, for instance, the Shell ethane cracker, which just started official operations and production of nurdle pellet things a few weeks ago, but had been already emitting stuff as they tested things and cleaned things. And Clifford is, I believe, with us and may be able to clarify. But I believe it has already exhausted with the testing plus the operation since it opened. Is that correct, Clifford? That it has exceeded its annual VOC allowance under its permit. So where do you go from here? So it's polluting the air, it's polluting the waterways with nurdles that get lost, it's polluting the land where the gas is fracked that they take the ethane from, and all the way along the pipelines, and at every stage that process leaks methane at the very least, and also ethane, which is flammable and even more explosive than methane, I think. At every stage, that is harmful. It's harmful to the people who live around fracking. It's harmful to the people who live around pipelines. It's harmful to the climate because methane is over 80 times as powerful a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. So even though burning methane for energy produces half as much carbon dioxide per unit energy than coal does, the whole system is so leaky of methane, 80 times more powerful greenhouse gas, that it's not really any better for the climate. It is cleaner burning than coal as well, but it's polluting people who live near it. And
Mary,
polluting,
we talked about- I just want to show people that these are, I don't know if you can see, I have a couple of
Mhm.
nurdles in my
oh,
store.
nurdles, good.
Yeah, but
Pick
more
some up and drop
importantly,
them in.
I want to show you these nurdles. There's about 15 in this little tiny glass container. And I picked this up myself about within view of Shell Cracker. This is before the cracker plant officially opened. And this is what I picked up in 10 minutes within 10 feet. There are this many.
Whether
This is
that,
before it officially started.
whether that was their test nurdles or they were just already around from other production facilities. I mean, people have been making, well, industries have been making plastic products out of nurdles for a long time.
Yes. of course.
My father worked for a plastic company near Poughkeepsie, New York, like 50 years ago. And so we've had plastic like this for a long time. So whether those are Shell's nurdles or not, we'll probably find out if what happens once Shell does start producing them, because they are so light. If you wanted to take your cup,
They
Diane,
have produced them. They are
right,
producing
they're
them.
now producing them, although they're not even up to full capacity, and they've already exceeded their VOCs for the year in the last few months. Is that pretty accurate, Clifford? Cliff is nodding.
Yes.
You have any
yes.
more commentary
I'm
there?
just typing in the chat that
Oh, great.
they exceeded their allowable VOC emissions in October, and they
Mhm.
officially went on what they would commercial grade in November 15th. So we know they're producing commercial product for selling, but as parents, we're not sure if they're actually up to full scale. We haven't been seeing the heavy
Mhm.
train traffic that we'd expect from that. So we imagine so. But if they're doing this now, and when they do get up to full scale or whatever, and the other thing is the fact that the DEP made a notice against them, but they're continuing to operate, so they get 2 more months to even exceed their amount. And it's not just by a little bit. It's over 100 tons.
Mhm.
So, and they
Yep.
continue. There was no part of the notice that they had to try to curtail. They've got 45 days to do a root cause analysis, and part of that would be how they would mitigate this and not be so bad.
Mhm.
That's 45 days away.
That's positively amazing, because their allowed amount of VOCs per year was, I don't remember the number, but it was
Big.
an amazing amount to begin with.
Mhm.
If they exceeded it in a couple of months already, that number to begin with was huge.
Yes, their
Yeah.
number, and in fact, when they went to get their air permits, there weren't enough VOC credits around to help them lower their value. And they talked the the EPA into changing some NOx credits into VOC credits to allow them to have the level that they have. So yes, that's
Yeah, I think they were
very
parlaying.
disturbing that they've done it already.
They were parlaying the pollutants that the previous installations there, which were a lead plant and a zinc plant, had been producing, and the new technology is not producing new products, is not going to produce the NOx, nitrogen oxides that those plants did. So they finagled being able to emit more VOCs because they're inherent to the whole petrochemical business. Getting back into the chat, Yvonne.
I did also, while you're looking into that,
Yeah.
I said Dylan has had their hand up for quite some
Oh,
time.
good. I was
so-
going to ask people to raise their hands, and then I had it off of the left one. Okay, we'll let Dylan go. Go for it.
Right.
Oh, you've muted yourself.
There. Is that okay now?
Yep,
Yes.
we hear you.
All right, unmute myself. Okay. Becca, I have a question for you because you talked about Kellogg's Raisin Bran and you said they have a plastic insert that you use.
Mhm.
All right, so I have a question because I use Post Raisin Bran, which
Uh-huh.
I do believe has quite a bit less sugar in it than Kellogg's, and this is the original. In the meantime, this is the bag that I always use afterward. And it's not plastic. I don't think this is plastic. I think it's wax paper.
Really?
Yeah.
I doubt it.
50
I
years
feel
ago,
like
it was
all
probably
the
wax
cereal
paper,
brands
but
changed over.
It feels
It-
like wax paper. It sounds like wax paper.
it doesn't look like wax paper from here. Can you bring it closer to the camera?
Yeah, it's too transparent and shiny.
Yeah,
But
Oh, well, I have.
I mean, they
like-
used to be wax paper, and Becca was talking about Epsom salts, which also now I get in those bags. And they used to come in cartons like a milk carton, which these days is plastic coated. And there again, 50 years ago, there were milk cartons, but they were wax coated.
Right.
And wax
So-
isn't.
So that they were in glass.
I actually just looked up Post Consumer Brands website because they do have a page on their website regarding their commitment to smart, sustainable packaging. And the good news is that all of their cardboard is 100% post-consumer recycled.
That's
cardboard.
good.
So the box is recycled already, which is great. Their cereal bags, they do say specifically that they are plastic, and that they are reducing the amount of plastic film in the plastic bags inside of the cereal boxes each year. So they are claiming to have cut their plastic use by more than 1 million pounds, and that they are planning to continue reducing the amount of plastic. But no, that the bag and the Post Consumer Brands products are plastic. I will put the link to this website in the chat as well.
I'm so
Excellent.
upset because I've been consistently using them and I must be putting the wrong things in them, and then I throw them away because they've had their food in them, so I don't recycle them. But
Well, they
Huh.
can be recycled. I mean, do you do any shopping at Giant Eagle? Because Giant Eagle stores have plastic bag recycling bins
Yes.
outside them, and they put them there because they're sending plastic bags into the world. But you can put any plastic bags, and there are a list of things, you're not supposed to put in black trash bags and things like that. But a lot of the plastic bags that you can at least get into, turn them into park benches or something.
My understanding is they're not, that only 5% of the plastic that is recycled is ever used.
Well,
for anything.
5%, that statistic is there, and that's inclusive. So that includes bottles and lids, and which machines have a hard time with.
medical equipment,
Medical,
all of
yeah,
that non-woven plastic fabric that's used to make surgical masks. And
Mhm.
like in some departments of the hospital, people wear entire outfits of that
suits out of
stuff.
that,
Yeah,
hazmat suits.
and durable plastic products. I mean, they're not just talking about disposable plastic packaging in that statistic. That's of all the plastic produced, about 5% gets recycled. A lot of it is not suitable for recycling.
And when
But
you send
of
things,
plastic film that you put in plastic film recycling bins, it is likely to get recycled because they don't have to be very particular about the kind of plastic. With the way they recycle that stuff is to shred it and make things like polyester fiberfill stuffing and that plastic lumber that people use to build decks and playgrounds and benches and stuff.
parking barriers and park benches and things like that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So,
Some of the non-woven fabric
Mm-hmm.
tote bags are made of
Mhm.
recycled plastic and are made of virgin plastic. They're not
Mhm.
always marked.
yeah, I
So the
think
problem
those
with-
are, go ahead, Diane.
The problem with this is that I really strongly had, as you've heard me say a zillion times, with saying, yes, this is great to recycle, because this fact of, only 5% gets used is because virgin plastic is so much cheaper. Manufacturers don't want to use your recycled plastic. They don't, and it can only be used one more time. It is poor quality. And
It's downcycling.
It's
Right.
downcycling, and so it's just our consumer dream that, oh yes, it's okay. And I was, we call it wish cycling. So I was doing a little bit of wish cycling myself, it turns out, because in Toronto, where my son goes to school, they will recycle any plastic. Well, any meaning not black plastic, but much more than I can get here. So we were saving it up and bringing it out there. Finally had some time to do a little research. And the same thing happens there. They take out the number 1 and number 2 bottles, and then the rest either gets landfilled or gets burned. Pyrolysis.
Well,
paralysis.
there's a different, and then now there's chemical recycling, which is kind of scary to think about.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
because people are
but
using that term very incorrectly. But I
there
just want to point to, yeah, okay, but
just to that point of any kind of plastic, there are 2 additional plastic recycling options around here, one of which is either 2 and 5s or just 5s. It's called Reimagine Recycling in town, in the East End somewhere in, where's that? Larimer. And that's just a very small startup that is taking those things, shredding them, and then melting what you imagine recycling to be, melting them and turning them into useful objects. They're kind of ditzy, useful, obvious.
The problem is with any recycling is we have much, much, much more plastic than we have use for.
I know. I just want to point these things out. You took stuff to Toronto. Let me answer that, okay? There's actually a place near Pittsburgh in the South Hills that will take any plastic. So I'm saving my lids and other things that can't go into, that aren't bottles. And I don't produce many bottles, but occasionally there are some. And occasional, trays or something of the number 6 plastic. And they will take, it's Michael Brothers is a waste hauling company that like they do dumpsters and stuff, but they also have a thing worked out with a company in Erie that does take any kinds of plastic, all that other stuff, then you can put in the city's recycling stream. And the company makes drainage material for soil. So I find it a little irksome that it is like it's plastic going into soil, but at least it is having another use. It's quasi-permanent because it's out of the sun, and it's providing a useful service that otherwise would probably be done with virgin plastic. So it's this black sort of, it looks like a black wormies that can hold a lot of water, and so it's used in sort of, people know about French drains. A lot of people have French drains around their house, so it's like that, and often in much larger scale settings. And you can see some of this at Construction Junction. They have a display about the material, and I also want to put in a plug for Construction Junction, which is a wonderful it's a nonprofit business that does materials reuse, mostly building materials, but sometimes furniture and building components. And it's a great thing. You donate the stuff, like you upgrade your toilet. If the old toilet still works, you donate it to them and they will sell it to somebody who has a non-functioning toilet and doesn't have much money or just wants to be green. If people been to my house, they're not in this view of my house, but a whole lot of beautiful old doors that were removed from 2 different houses. I really lucked out. My kitchen counter is mostly, and all the rest of the marble in my kitchen is from Construction Junction. So taken out of other things or scraps. The tile floors I have are surplus, like some granite and marble company changed their product lines, and so they donated all their samples, and so If you walk in my front door, you see 15 different kinds of marble that I made into a design. And my just all kinds of stuff. My future kitchen sink is from there. Will be changing out, and the faucet, if it turns out to work. I hope it does it. So that's a wonderful place for people who are reuse minded. It's called Construction Junction. It's right close to the food co-op. I often stop by there. I also take my recycling there, not just metals for the CJ dumpster, but the city has a pickup a drop-off site, which is for people who are in apartments, because curbside recycling is not provided to people in apartment buildings, and people from out of town who are willing to come in. And I take my stuff there, my recycling. I don't put my recycling out to curbside because it is, I think single stream is stupid, and they do a better job of separating. There's like separate corrugated cardboard and paperboard and glass, and then plastic bottles and cans go in their own dumpster. Although I must say, people put a lot of trash in there, and I don't know what's happening, but I imagine it's only worse on people's yard and people's driveways. So I want to get back to, okay, I see Dylan has her hand up. I want to get back to some things that are way up in the chat. And then work down to the current chat things, and also note that if people do want to, oh, that was Dylan from before.
Real quick, this is quick.
Oh, yes.
Okay, one other thing that I've been using for years, and this is the Bon Mama,
Bon Mama, yep.
Right, jelly.
Yep.
This is absolutely the best jelly in the world. There's no
It's very
corn syrup.
good.
It's great. And it comes in glass, and it has this type of a lid. This is a giant one from Costco. You don't usually find these. Usually they're like this.
They're little.
I will take these with me, and I use them as my drinking glasses. I don't have any other glasses. And if I go out on a picnic, it's great because I put this on, the lid on, and then the bugs don't go in. But I'll take this in if I'm going to buy just for myself and one person, a little bit of potato salad or a little of this or that. I ask them to put it in this.
Where are you shopping? Where are you shopping?
Giant Eagle. Giant Eagle has done this. Shop and Save has done it, and Fresh Time has done it. I know one place said, "Oh, we're not allowed to do that." I said, "Okay, wrap it up in tinfoil."
Well, yeah, the co-op went away from that for a little while in the pandemic. Whole Foods used to do it, but I don't know whether they still do, because I stopped shopping there when Amazon bought them.
I don't.
And I haven't tried it. Yeah, you have, since you have to weigh the jar, it needs to be a place that knows how to deal with a tare weight.
Right.
And that's tare, T-A-R-E, which is something that every grocer should know about. So thank you for that point, that yes, when you're out and about at a picnic, you use a jar as a drinking glass. And I know a lot of folks who use Beaumont jars as drinking glasses just because they're cute. I use them to put, I put honey in them from my bees when they come my way. So that's one thing that I haven't even recycled many glass jars when they do come my way lately, because I will put honey in them. And what's
There's
that?
No plastic around it.
There is plastic, but if it's sitting there, the food isn't in contact with the lid. So even canning jar lids, like I have, this is rice, but I also put leftovers, which are, in jars, and there is a plastic of some sort liner in there, but it's not in contact with the food, so it's less of a concern.
When I worked in an office, I would take my lunch every day in 2-cup glass salsa jars. That's about the right amount of entree for a lunch. And so I just, pack the leftover food into the jars and put them in the refrigerator, and then grab one for lunch.
Right. And in fact, at restaurants back in the days when we went occasionally to a restaurant and ate at the restaurant, which we don't do now, I would take, I sometimes would have the tiffin that Diane sells. I don't know if you have one handy to show. It's this metal thing that clamps shut. Mine is over there somewhere. But sometimes that isn't, there you go. And it's like 3 stacking thingies, and it clamps together and has a handle. It's an Indian concept. There's a whole documentary film about those. There's a giant industry, well, not, it's just a custom in India where people really value homemade food in India. And so workmen, and I say men because this is usually men, go off maybe even to another town on the train to work. And in the morning, their wives will be home and make them a fresh lunch, pack it in a tiffin, which is also called a dabawala. And there are people who would go around to all the houses and pick up all the tiffins and like have them hanging off their bicycles in giant mounds, and then take them on the train to the other town where all the industry is and distribute them. And these people often are illiterate, but they have some sort of marking and keeping track system. And it's like a joy to behold. And it's using, you know, human labor to substitute for a stale, you know, it's gotten cold lunch. It's like why they couldn't do this and like pack it in the morning and send it with them, but that's not what they do. They do this tiffin thing. So that is just very cool. There was a documentary about it, which was
It's
fantastic.
a really cute movie. I can't remember the name of it, but
Yeah.
it's interesting that you bring that up, because when I don't bring my tiffin as much anymore as I bring my my silicone containers. Oops, sorry.
Well, I tend to bring just
Yeah.
mason
Glass jar-
jars,
Wait, let me
or
tell you.
the kind of yeah, you have your things
let me
all
tell you.
handy.
I bring this one now because I can condense it to this. But I just have to tell you that when I would take this more often, I can remember this one particular restaurant where the restaurateur actually started sobbing when I handed this tiffin to him to put my order into it. We're like, you know, what did we do wrong? And it had brought back memories of his childhood from what Maren was just saying.
Yeah.
And I had another customer from India, and she saw these products in my store, and she said, you know, my group, a social group, I don't remember what group it was, but she said, you know, I feel shameful because now we're using disposable plastic, and yet you are using our traditional ways. We need to get back to our traditional ways. So it was,
Well,
I was like, I didn't mean to shame you, but it was just really interesting to see how people from other cultures are responding to us taking this on. And it's a reminder to them, you know, a good feeling of the child, but also a reminder of, you know, maybe some of these older ways were better ways.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that-
And I mean, I sometimes take the tiffin if I have it, but I always have mason jars in the car. And then there's this kind of thing, which is, it involves silicone or some kind of, and maybe plastic, but it's all on the lid. I think the
Right.
silicone is the seal, but that, again, it's not in contact with the food. This is some potatoes from yesterday. And these, you know, sometimes things are better in a flat thing than in a tall thing.
So basically, as far as the glass jars, I think glass and metal are like the best. But after 20 years of having my store, what I find out people were objecting to, they're like, I don't want to carry the glass, it's heavy. And I'm like, that's the best, because you can, you know, put it in your refrigerator, put it in your freezer. It is very eco-friendly. You can use it forever, but people don't want to carry the weight. So, and then with as far as these, which are also wonderful and are holding the heat, people are like, oh, but it's awkward and I can't microwave with it. And so I think that's where the silicone comes in, because it's a convenience thing, but still good. But if you can bear the weight of glass, my God, go for that. That's wonderful. But I do have to say that, Dylan, you were talking about going to stores and having them fill your own container. And I'm like, applaud that. And I try to do that as often as possible. But I think Maren may have mentioned, or someone else mentioned, that actually the health department is not crazy about that. So this is
Well,
how
it's not the health department, it's the FDA regulation. I researched it a while ago because there was a local restaurant that was very happy. They said, and we'll put up a sign. And so this was early in the evolution of PASUP, and we had a research group. And I said, why don't you hold your fire. We're not going to put up a sign to suggest it because I don't want to get you in trouble, you, the restaurateur. And it turned out, like, if it was a Allegheny County Health Department thing, PASUP, I would have taken that on and advocated, because there's rules. You just would have a certain rule to deal with it. You know,
They're gonna put me in jail. If they're still gonna allow me to, I'll let them tell me no. But if I give it to them and I know it's.
yeah,
clean,
it's certainly not on
I'm gonna
you.
get-
I just
gonna
didn't
go-
want, I
Right.
didn't want to encourage the owner of the restaurant to put up a sign encouraging it and get in trouble. Because I would feel bad if they got in
And
trouble.
then-
At the grocery store level, I'm taking it to the counters where they give you some,
The bulk
you
food,
know,
yeah,
pretty
the deli
okay.
or whatever.
And
Yeah.
I would say that out of 5 times, I've had maybe 1 time that somebody said, oh, we
Mhm.
can't do that. It's not allowed by the
And-
blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
They're
And that's
absolutely right. They cannot do that. But what I'm telling you
what I
is,
asked them and they
yes,
can
and
tell me no.
so I'm gonna play devil's advocate to myself. So I encourage everyone to do that feels comfortable doing that. I really encourage that. But know that they actually cannot do it because of
do
the
know
health. But here's the thing. If you know in your heart you are giving them an absolutely clean container, I still encourage you to do it. If they say
Mhm.
no, they're well within their rights. But there are
Absolutely.
ways around it. And that's why I wanted to show you that, every deli counter has this kind of wax paper, and this is wax paper. I just happen to also have some in my home, but they have it at their counter. So what I do is when I go to the deli, and if I'm getting cheese or meat, then I say, please just put it on your wax paper. Then
Yeah.
I put
Hand it to
in
me.
my container.
Yeah,
and then
I've done
put
that.
everything. So you can get around that. And if you want them to, if you're in a restaurant and they will not put in your own container,
Sit
that's
down.
easy. Just have them plate up your dinner and then transfer it. As
Mhm.
far as the deli with like, potato salad or something, that might be a little bit, there's nothing.
If they don't have a sit-down place to
Yeah,
feed,
unless
to
they
give
can
people
put,
food.
I have done this where something that's saucier, I have still had them put it onto the deli paper and transfer it, but it's maybe, I do it, but it might be much more of a mess than the rest of the population wants to do.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Well, I will
people
tell them to
creative.
put it in the middle of a piece of tinfoil. And then I just wrap
Yes.
it this way and that
Yeah.
way in an envelope, and that's it.
So I encourage
Okay,
do that, but just like I said, don't give them a hard time if they can't do it,
I
because really they're
don't.
not supposed to.
I
Mhm.
But
don't.
yep,
you know
yep.
in your
I'll
heart
break
what's right.
I'll break the
Okay.
rules in a nice way. Yeah.
Yes, all right. We have raised hand, and then I do want to get back to some of the good stuff that went by in the chat. So we will have John and Willow, or Willow and John. Working on unmuting. Whoops, you're muted again. Somehow you doubled.
Okay, so when you were talking about tiffins, I have something that's a planet box, lunch box, which is kind of a cross tiffin and a bento box.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes with some little inserts that have silicone lids on them. So if I'm taking something like canned salmon or tuna fish or something, and I don't want to be dealing with opening the can where I'm going, I might put it in this. It's not really good for soups. It could leak a little, but it'll take sort of sloshy stuff. And then ones I could put peanut butter or a dip or something like that. And they fit into the compartments too. So it's very modular. So that's been something that I've been taking to restaurants, and I don't ask them to give me a doggy bag or anything. I just wait till they're not looking and slip it off my plate into my own thing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're going to give me their styrofoam or plastic or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I think there's no legal problems with you bringing your own container for leftovers from a sit-down restaurant, and you just take it
As
off
long
the
as you
plate.
pack it your, yeah.
Yeah,
they
it's
will
that
not-
the issue with filling a container with an entire serving at the restaurant is that they are taking this thing, which came from the world full of typhoid and COVID, and bringing it into the kitchen. Now, they're dealing with raw meat back there. They know how to wash their hands. So, in my opinion, there should be some simple rules that they would sign up for that says, okay, you will use a ladle and gravity, and the ladle won't touch the dish. And then you hand it back out, and then you wipe the table where you had it and you wash your hands, and that's easy. I mean, it is an extra step, but it is saving them the money of providing the takeout dish. So it might equal out.
So the
Okay.
other thing I wanted to say was about the glass jars. I've had this back when apple juice used to come in a jar, and this one was meant to be reused. It says juice on one side, water on the other. I think this jar dates back to about 1975. So I guess I wasn't giving myself full credit when I said I started deplasticizing in the 1990s. Because I was doing it in the 70s. And the plastisol is getting a little gross over time. It lasts about 40 years, maybe. But it's
But
discoloring.
that looks like a common size, and that looks like a
It's
common
even.
size, and you can probably take one off of some other jar that comes into your hands.
I've been replacing them with salsa lids.
Yeah,
And the fact-
exactly.
Right,
So, and those
square.
can be recycled. What?
The fact that they're square, they fit on the shelf better, side by side.
Yep. Okay.
And one other thing that went by is from Trellis Company, I got these stainless steel lids, and they have a silicone can in them. Really good for keeping the food fresh. My whole kitchen is furnished with lots of canning jars and reused jars like that.
Yeah, people
So-
who have been here, which is a lot of people from the first 90 salons, know that I have a pantry full of glass jars that just cycle through. They cycle through the freezer, and I guess I'm going to do this before, so I don't forget, before I go diving into the chat. There's a lot of messages there. We talked about liquids and fatty things that are more likely to leach stuff out of plastic. Other advantages of glass include the air tightness. I make a lot of pesto, and you can have pesto. I mean, some people put pesto for little tiny servings in ice cube trays, which to me, I don't like that because that's introducing way too much air, because air is the enemy in food storage. So I use glass jars for pesto, for soup stock, and something about freezing in glass jars. Often I want a whole quart of soup stock. So what do? This is a can or freeze jar. This is a pint size. They come in half pints, and they're like jelly jars. And this is just like a giant jelly jar. And it has straight sides, so you can freeze in there. You do need to leave a little headspace, and I could have gone to my basement freezer and gotten a jar to show you the end result of this method. But you need to leave some headspace because water will expand when it freezes. So whether it's pesto or soup stock, but I can fill these, eliminating just about all the air by adding to, like, I freeze it and then I just fill the top, and that small amount of stuff doesn't expand enough to break the jar. It'll just fill up to the lid about, and sometimes that's a couple of steps. And I also freeze in these. If you just froze with a normal headspace that you would can with in a jar like this, it would break. The bottom would break because it would force it out, because it would hit as it's going up. It's not straight sided. It has a little shoulder, and it would hit that shoulder and it would break the jar. But if you fill it to here, well below the shoulder, so, and then fill the rest of it, it's more space efficient and it's less air. For things like pesto, or roasted tomatoes or something, or salsa, if I'm not canning that time, I would, and I guess I'll take you out of there. I add a layer of olive oil on top, and that keeps it fresh. And I've had a better pesto that was 5 or 6 years old in a well-sealed glass jar with olive oil than when it is in a plastic container. So I don't freeze in plastic containers pretty much at all. I now want to go back to into the chat. We have all kinds of good stuff there that I want to bring out for discussion. Yvonne made a point early on, just said a lot of this seems like product design problems. Products are not designed with the idea of sustainable packaging in their design. It's an afterthought. So the Post cereal company has a web page for sustainable packaging, but it wasn't embedded in their product. And I don't know if it's the most relevant for that particular product, but there's plenty of things where it is. We basically need to reduce first. In terms of granola, is the one cereal you can get in the bulk bin at the food co-op. Granola is a premium product. It's expensive. It's not that good for you because it has oil in it as part of how it works to roast it and make it nice and crispy. And it's usually sweetened, and I've made plenty of granola over the years. And you can just make it, and then you know what's in it. You know the ingredients are what you like and what you want, and basically oil, some honey, maybe honey or maple syrup, oatmeal, mush it around, add nuts or raisins or whatever you want, and then spread it out on a cookie sheet and roast it in the oven and stir it around every so often. And you can have different granola every time without having to pay the premium prices, because most of the bulk of it is oatmeal, which is pretty cheap, and you can get organic oatmeal in bulk, certainly at the food co-op and probably at other places that have bulks.
And
yeah.
Aldi has recently improved their oatmeal canister so that the only part that's plastic is now the lid. It has a flexible plastic lid that you pull off.
And it's like a cardboard thing?
Yeah, the cardboard used to have a plastic rim around the top and the bottom. And on the top, the rim was attached to a plastic lid with a ring that you had to pull out. And you had to do it really carefully to keep the whole thing from getting away from you and spraying oatmeal all over the kitchen. They have now replaced that with paper that is adhered to the top rim of the cardboard container. You pull off the paper seal, you can put it in the compost. It doesn't seem to have any plastic on it. And then the cardboard container is a recyclable cardboard container. So
and the cardboard does not have a plastic.
Does
the cardboard have a plastic liner or a foil
no,
liner?
There's no more plastic on it on
okay.
either the top or bottom.
Wow. And
Yes.
it doesn't have preservatives and stuff?
That Aldi said like 4 years ago that they were going to reduce single-use plastic in their stores. And this is one of the few positive developments that I've seen. I'm a regular Aldi.
Okay. There was a shout out to PASUP's website where there is an amazing source for recycling info. It is called Recycle This Pittsburgh, and I'm just going to bring it up here. And share that screen. And if you don't know what to do with a particular item, go look on Recycle This Pittsburgh. Because one of the main people for a long time in PASUP, Sabrina Kuliba, spent a lot of time connecting with the city recycling people and researching the hazards of different materials. And you just click on one of these things and there will be a page for it about that thing, and with do's and don'ts and more information on them and how to repair them in this particular case. Just every kind of thing you can imagine. So clamshell containers and grocery bags and food waste. And so it talks about composting and Christmas trees and those awful mesh produce bags, which I think are basically nothing because you can't do anything with them because there are too many kinds of materials mixed together, which is generally the problem with things that can't be recycled. We talked about silicone as being better than a lot of other kinds of plastic. Oh yes, and sand, in terms of silicone, it is made from sand basically. And although it must have some sort of plasticizers, and I still don't know what those are, there is a global sand shortage and sand poaching that makes sourcing and durability important considerations. I certainly do use a lot of silicone scrapers. I think they're great. I used to use rubber scrapers. I guess a lot of people call them spatulas, but I think the spatula is a metal thing that you, some people call that a pancake flipper. I don't know. I'm not from around here.
You know, Mary, I think you're making another important point, is that the bottom line is what you already have is the most environmentally friendly item.
Well,
And you know,
silicone,
we're Americans and we always want to get new and the better thing. But you know, like I saw a post somebody on Facebook and they had all of their Tupperware things. They're like, oh, I think I want to get something more environmentally friendly. That is the most environmentally friendly. It's just
just
not
use
healthy.
what you have. Yeah. And silicone scrapers last a long time. They do,
Yeah.
after a while, they get sticky and you kind of wonder what that stickiness is. And so then you demote them to other purposes in the household, or
I-
you even
I-
throw them away.
Wonder how unsafe Tupperware becomes with really long periods of
Mhm.
time. My parents are still using, when they've cut up an onion and they don't use the whole thing, they put the rest of it in the onion keeper. We've had that particular yellow Tupperware for at least 45 years, and this is maybe not such a good idea to be putting cut food against that plastic. And
Yeah,
sticking
I
it in.
typically put half an onion on a regular China glaze plate, and I might put a plastic bag around it, or sometimes I just leave it. If it's a really nice flat cut and a good seal, I might just leave it like that, but usually air will seep in. So I almost might have put a plastic bag around that, but it doesn't contact the food as usual.
I use the
So-
glass salsa jar for that. Salsa jars are only for things with onions and garlic in them, and peanut butter jars are not for onions and garlic.
Well, a
and that's
salsa jar isn't big enough for the onions that we've been getting from the food co-op in recent years. So
Yeah,
it's this
sometimes you have
big.
more ways.
Yeah,
than
I
a
would
quick-
rather, I just slap it onto a plate or a casserole that closes. I mean, right now there's we have a little Corningware casserole, little square thing with a plastic lid, which doesn't contact the food, but that's what came with, and I've had it for 30 years. Clothing can't beat 100% cotton
Same
and
thing.
wool.
This is the main thing I'm learning from this conversation and from this chat, is that people that are concerned and people that are creative can make it work. But, you know, when we're talking about the mainstream person, you know, I don't know that they have the awareness. I don't know if they have the time. I don't know if they have interest. I don't know if they have the creativity.
Well, I
So
think
that-
one of the
that's the key.
things that PASUP as an organization could do, and well, I've known the people management of the co-op for decades, so an individual could, but it would certainly always have more power if you have a petition behind it. So if there are solutions that we come upon that would be good for changing the way food is gotten, or knowing that a particular brand, you know, the co-op tends towards organic stuff. If there's a particular brand that you know about, that you've seen somewhere else that has better packaging, it's like the co-op had avocados, and like they changed them to being, they had them in cardboard, and it's like, well, previously they had them in nothing. I like that better. And I think it was just a temporary thing. This avocado supplier couldn't do it, and they went to this other avocado supplier. And like Trader Joe's is notorious for everything's in plastic. Is very frustrating, and I rarely go to Trader Joe's because when I go in there, all I can see I don't want. So Diane is holding up a piece of cardboard with holes in it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's been a busy day and I didn't get I thought I had the card with this, but I do not get that, and we can share it somewhere, maybe on our website. But these are packages for produce that are made out of compostable paper. And you can see that if you buy them, and this would not be us, this would be for the co-op or another store. So if you buy them, you can buy them flat, and then they fold up and they're sturdy enough to stack. And you can put berries and things that need to be boxed. I know avocados don't need to be boxed, but berries kind of do. So I wish that they would use more products like this and all those stupid clamshell type things.
But unless it's coated in some kind of plastic or PFAS or something,
Well, it can be-
berries can seep liquid and then the whole thing will go bluey.
Yeah. So this one, I don't know, this is kind of a slippery feel. This is just plain old paper feel. And then I
Yeah.
think that, you could probably coat it with a wax,
Yeah.
a natural wax. But
I
anyway,
would
there
think
are
so.
alternatives.
We used to
You
use
don't think-
waxes for a lot of things. So, and even if you can get away from the plastic clamshell and have a cardboard thing, which has a little, like for berries, the plastic clamshells, when I've seen them, which is mostly people bringing them to salons for the potluck, there's a little fluffy thing that has some plastic and some probably paper derived thing to soak up juices that the berries are exuding. And that, I mean, if you had that, then couldn't you just use a cardboard thing? Because if you have that, and it might include a little plastic, but it's much less than a whole plastic clamshell. So reducing, I think, will be helpful. So getting back to the chat, is your hand still up, Willow, or for a new point, or is it just up from before?
It's up again. John wants to talk.
Oh, and John, okay. Add
Yes.
you guys back in.
So we moved from Portland, which has most of the features that you're talking about that Pittsburgh has, to Truth or Consequences, which is
75 miles from any city of any size, and we have no car.
in any major recycling center. So I'm getting an education. It'll be a while before I start to become an activist here, I guess. But so they don't recycle any plastic at all, nor glass, because they can't make it work. Go to the city council and say it's cost effective.
Nor paper.
Yeah. So I'm quite frustrated. We're building up a pile of stuff we're trying to figure out what to do with. A couple things I want to say. One is there's a whole rural America that doesn't have these services, and we activists ought to pay enough attention to that to be looking for alternatives for people out there in the hinterlands. The second is TerraCycle has services where you fill a box of whatever plastic, and they'll recycle it, but you have to pay a certain amount for it.
They say they will. They may be sending it to be burned for energy. They're being sued right now.
There was a documentary film that had, among other things, an expose of like one giant bale of stuff which had TerraCycle identifiers on it, was being shipped out of the country and being sent off to incineration. But the guy claimed that was like some error. I don't know. Do you know more? Is there a lawsuit now pending he was lying, or do we know?
That lawsuit was up when the movie was made. That was a previous PASUP event that we hosted.
Yeah.
So and it was interesting because then when they asked him about that in the film, of course, get off camera, blah, blah, blah. So who knows? I mean, who knows? I mean, his reaction wasn't like, oh, that was a mistake. His reaction was, I don't want to talk to you anymore. So
I found TerraCycle to be very opaque about what they're actually doing with things. I have been collecting coffee bags for them nonetheless. I try to buy the coffee without a bag, but the fact is, when I buy it from the bulk dispenser at the East End Food Co-op, they are refilling that from a big
bag,
foil
from
bag.
a 5-pound bag, which
It's a
I get.
bigger one, but
Yeah.
And that's another, that also raises the point of this Frankfurt Farms, which is a local wholesaler of organic and natural foods, and there's a catalog with just all kinds of things, and some of them are packaged, but you can get the 5-pound coffee bag. You can get so at least there's surface to volume ratio. One, if it's a thing that you can reasonably use before it goes bad in whatever storage, and you can reasonably store it, you can get the 5-pound raisins. You can get, because that's what they're filled. Well, I guess at the co-op they're probably filled out of a 30-pound raisin thing, because I know that I had the job at, I don't know if it was this co-op or a previous co-op in Ithaca, of filling of doing the raisins, and it was scooping the raisin, and it was actually mixing a little olive oil in them so that they wouldn't clump up so much. So they seem like they're similarly unclumpy. So I wonder I don't know if it says olive oil on the shelf anywhere, but at any
It
rate,
used to.
yeah. So they are probably getting it in 30-pound bags. But you can get flour in 25-pound sacks. And even when you get flour in 5-pound sacks or 2-pound sacks, it's a paper sack with a,
Yeah, put those
with
in the
a
compost.
string. Yeah.
few months.
And so I will throw this in the chat very shortly. It's just frankfurt.com.
So Becca, you mentioned throwing the paper in the compost, and you also mentioned earlier about putting something else in the compost. I remember what it was, and saying, well, I think it's paper. I don't think there's any plastic because it decomposes. And I just want to bounce that off of what Donica said. She posted in the chat an article about compostable plastic. And, you know, obviously I'm here with you, so I can scour that article really well, but I'm looking forward to looking into that further, because I noticed that article was written in 2020, and I've talked to quite a few people from Breakthrough from Plastics and all the various organizations. And it's interesting because what I've been hearing, of course, this is very controversial. And this is what I tell people when they say, oh, this is a new word I'm hearing on composting or recycling, whatever. And I say, look at the source, because often the source is hidden. They have really great names, but if you dig deep enough, somehow they're related to industry or manufacturing, somehow they're related to someone profiting off of plastic. Mm-hmm. So it's really, and it's, you know, and I know, Becca, I know, Maren, you guys are great researchers, but they make it really tricky and really hard for you to find out what the real source is. You know, like I said, they have names. So I would just really caution people, if you're going to compost, you know, make sure it's plant-based. I have actually, I have.
And don't expect plant-based plastics to break down in your home composting system, because they need a high temperature or lots and lots of time. Like
it depends on the product. The stiff plastic, the PLA corn cups I've tested it, and even if I cut them up, they will kick around for a year or more, and ultimately I give up. But the bags, like the produce bags the co-op, we'll get to that in a second. The co-op promotes people to bring their own stuff, and they also have cloth bags that you can buy, but or you could make cloth bags, but they do have plastic-like bags available. They're a fairly soft bag, and those will compost, but I still don't know what's in them.
I want to get back to, you interrupted me, so I'm going to interrupt you and say that there's some things like this is actually cellophane, which is actually just plant material. So that will home compost. But what you're talking about is a compostable plastic, and that's a whole different ballgame. And the thing is, so the term compostable is very confusing, because just because you can't see it doesn't mean it biodegrades. It just means that it melts into something you can no longer see, but it's just liquid plastic in your compost. It is not a really great thing. So just because you can't, it means
I compost in a lot of different places. I have places where I put stuff that I don't put in my food compost, which is, I'm more selective about what goes in there, food scraps and
what
leaves.
I'm trying to bring home is, just because you can't see it doesn't mean you just don't have melted plastic. Do we really need to have melted plastic instead of bigger chunks of plastic? It's not, plastic is plastic is plastic, no matter what it's made of, whether it's made from fracked fuel, whether it's made from oil, or whether it's made of bioplastic. It's still a plastic and has the same effect once it's made from whatever it's made from into plastic. So don't be fooled when people talk about bioplastics. This is not the cure. So anyway.
So the other product I was talking about composting before is the pouch from the Blue Land laundry tablets or dishwasher tablets that has this silvery lining, and I don't know what it is, and have been meaning to research it more. But the reason I put it in my home compost is it says this pouch is compostable. It doesn't say it's compostable where municipal composting facilities exist. And this is not just any company. This is a super environmentally thinking company that's against PLA. They don't use PLA in their products. So I figured it was probably home compostable. And I have successfully broken down one of these bags in my home compost bin, which isn't even covered. I don't have a good composting system. I turn the compost when I get around to it. It's just in some giant sized flower pots in the backyard. So it broke down in about a year. I did see little silvery bits when it was in process. Like one of the times I turned the compost, I could see where this pouch was. And then the next time it was just gone. So I'm hopeful that that's not plastic breaking into microplastics and it's actually
worse than that
product, but I don't know what.
That's my concern is we're breaking down to nanoplastics. So it's like, we just feel happy. It's like wish recycling, wish composting. So all I'm just trying to say again is it's tough. They make it tough on consumers. Even everyone here that spent 2 hours, an hour and a half here being together, we're obviously concerned. It's still hard for us to learn what's in things, what they really are, what they're really doing. And when we're really concerned, what are these poor guys out there that aren't that concerned? Just tell me what to do. It's hard. And we do need to put, somebody said earlier in the chat, and I agree with this 110%, we need to realize and put the pressure back on industry and on manufacturers. They have put the onus on us and put the onus on us to recycle and us to figure out. And the people that are dirtying up our environment and our personal health, they need to take responsibility. And unfortunately, it's us that need to take the responsibility to get them to take the responsibility. We need to speak up constantly. Okay, off my soapbox, sorry.
Okay, so diving back into the chat. We want to put pressure on manufacturers to develop more sustainable packaging. We need to, Yvonne pointed out the importance of feedback regarding packaging in suggestion box. Costco has one. The Food Co-op has one. I don't know about other merchants, whether Giant Eagle does, but Giant Eagle usually has a manager somewhere who can take a comment. I don't know if they have a suggestion box. But that's certainly a good thing to do. If you see something good, point it up. If you see something bad, point it up. There was a question that went by. Bill asked whether metal jar lids, like peanut butter jars or this kind of thing, are recyclable at curbside, and they are not, because the machines, they can deal with cans and bottles, but they don't deal well with lids because they just fall between things, which kind of surprises me because it seems like all metal, well, first off, all metal, they could just pull it out with, they're usually steel, they can pull it out with a magnet. So I think that would be the first step. And then they take the plastic and they bounce it around, and different plastic bounces to different heights or something. And they use air, and they use agitation and bouncing, and they use air blowing, and they use magnets. So I don't know why, but according to Recycle This Pittsburgh, it says do separate metal lids from their jars and rinse off completely. Don't place metal lids in curbside recycling. Do drop off metal lids at a scrap metal recycling location, which, as I mentioned, there's one right outside Construction Junction, and then you can go in and find new accoutrements for your house that are old. Okay, so yeah, how to put pressure on manufacturers has to come from consumer demand. Lori has long wanted to organize that. Lori, are you still with us? Let's see. Oh, where's my participant list? It's buried.
I am. I'm still here.
You are. Okay. Says, I've long wanted to organize that. Lobbying places like Giant Eagle and Costco to use more sustainable packaging has worked some in my experience, especially if you point out that you shop at their competitors for this reason, because they use more sustainable packaging. So Lori, you seem like a candidate to join the more active core of PASUP. Just saying.
Yes, I should do that. I didn't do that last year, and I can do that this year.
Awesome.
Remind me how I do that again. There's an email or something.
Just tell, that I didn't. You've got 3/4 of the steering committee in front of you, but maybe soon it'll be 3/5. Donica had to leave. There may be a message about it somewhere down below that I haven't gotten to. Okay, feedback on packaging, 100% cotton and wool. I did, let's
Wait, just let me
see.
continue there. Maren has my
Oh, yes.
email address. If anybody
Yeah.
wants to contact me about that, please, I would love to get involved in that.
Okay. Do we have a quorum to say we should just add Lori to the steering committee
Lori-
email list? Who's in charge of that?
My email or drop your
Well,
email, get in touch
Yeah,
with you.
I have it too. We can do that offline. Okay. Also, I don't know if Linda is still around, but I wanted to shout out to, I mentioned Raucous reducing outdoor contaminants in indoor spaces, and they just keep having rolling cohorts. So you can join for 3 weeks and get a whole bunch of monitors and learn a lot about air quality and have cleaner air. I did put in the Frankfurt website. Let's see. Okay, and Clifford back in our bioplastic. Bioplastics should contain ester, amide, and glycolic bonds that bacteria and nature are familiar with, can be broken down, and they are depolymerized, not melted. So there you go. There certainly are, I mean, people talk about plastic eating bacteria, but a lot of polyester is polymerized esters. And I learned about esters back in high school chemistry, where we mixed, if you take an acid and an alcohol, you get an ester. And then you stick them all together with something that you put in that's like a catalyst that helps grab onto this and grab onto this and hold it in a long string. And that's what gives it structure. So an ester by itself is a liquid. And I remember in high school chemistry, we took isopropyl alcohol and salicylic acid, which is basically aspirin, which is plant-based at its core. It's probably synthetic now, but as salix is the genus name of willows. So all willows, that's, you've heard of willow bark tea as a remedy for aches and pains. That's because willow is aspirin, and aspirin is willow, or was. So we took aspirin and alcohol and got banana flavor. So when you see artificial flavors, they're esters. And polyester is a bunch of esters stuck together. And I learned more about that when I was chatting with Daphne Chan. So number 5, plastics, that would be reimagined recycling. Diane, can you chase down, or Becca, chase down the website for that? And it may just be
They didn't
reimagined
have a
recycling.
website, only an Instagram. And
Okay,
I
that's how
don't,
they do
I
it.
don't have an Instagram
Okay.
account.
I
They
can find that
were
when I'm.
reposting from Instagram to Facebook. And that's how I heard about the last collection event
Okay.
that I heard about, which was like 1.5 years ago. I don't know if they've had one since then. I have a lot of yogurt tubs piled up.
Yes, they have. Here's their Instagram. I don't know if you have to have an Instagram account to see stuff, but there is a Facebook, and it again would be reimagined recycling. Oh, and Linda did post raucous.org. Yay.
I just got to ask for clarification on one thing, as I'm saving up those number 5 yogurt tubs as we speak to take to Toronto. They definitely do not get recycled there. Whoever was telling me that, like,
Oh, no,
absolutely not.
They do at number 5 yogurt tubs are a thing for reimagined recycling, and they will turn it into a soap dish or something.
No, I'm asking about in Toronto. Whoever said that they don't recycle in Toronto, they don't do number 5 yogurt tubs.
Oh, so actually my husband, hold on, let me ask him because he's just in the kitchen.
Thank you.
They might, because those are more common than a lot of the other weird plastic items there are. I have friends in both Spokane, Washington, and one of the suburbs of Atlanta who were proud that their curbside recycling was taking all numbers of plastic, and just this year have found out that they're not actually recycling all numbers.
Mhm.
Okay, here's the guy who did my research up in Toronto for me. So let's see what he has to say.
So they don't
I'm-
recycle by number. They will take anything but black plastic
Right.
and styrofoam. They don't take styrofoam. And what I found out was that so it goes to a sorting facility. Some of it gets recycled. They didn't say which ones, but I'm guessing 1 and 2, like everywhere else.
Possibly 5. Don't know.
Possibly 5. I don't know. They didn't say. And then everything else gets either landfill or burnt. So it's probably not much different than anywhere else, other than they accept everything.
Yeah.
And well, Toronto has a big problem going back to when I lived there. They have no place to put their garbage. They were shipping it to Michigan, and then Michigan stopped accepting it. So they try not to put anything into landfill. So they have like organic composting pickup and things like that.
Yeah, that they are miles ahead of us. And when that, you can only put out regular garbage every other week, whereas recycling is every week.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of here.
Yeah.
And
Which doesn't
you
really
have to
make
pay-
sense.
You have to pay for a container for garbage, but you don't have to pay for a container for recycling.
Yeah, which I think I really advocate for. But I think, Lori, that really answer your question is that this is really a global problem. So, like Becca was saying, and what Bob was saying, there's places where they take everything, but what do they do with it? So right here in O'Hara, where I live, they take glass at the curb, but the people that are collecting at the curb do not recycle it. They pitch it, but because it was in the contract that they originally had, they still take it, but it doesn't get recycled. So
Yeah, well,
I mean,
if
that's
anybody knows how to get yogurt without resorting to a number 5 plastic container, please let me know. Organic yogurt, like
There
Co-op does
are,
glass. And the other thing is, Lori, is I was going to bring up later, is that, knowing that even the people here that are so concerned about plastic still get stuck with plastic is, understand that there's some things to get recycled, but it's very few. But the other thing is, how can you reuse that? And right now, I found a woman who is actually takes a day of her week and she makes food for the homeless. And she's collecting things like what you just said, the plastic yogurt containers, and she's filling it with food. And then she's actually driving about to places where she knows people live on the streets and she distributes it there. Now, so that's getting one more use. And then those containers will most probably end up in the garbage. But like I said, they were only going to get one more use anyway, if recycled, probably. And some of those are short-term use things. So I look at it and say, okay, I'm happy with this one more use feeding.
Oh, but those two things aren't even, Diane, because when the plastic is recycled for one more use, there's a huge amount of energy goes into melting, processing it. Whereas if you just wash it in the sink, and reuse it, you're not using
the other thing.
as much.
So it's like everything with this, it's very complicated, because that was the point I was going to make. It takes a lot more energy to repurpose it to something. But if you repurpose it into a park bench, it's going to last a lot longer than that food I gave in that. So
or those underground drainage noodles.
Yeah.
They're-
So,
the
but
co-op-
anyway,
Yeah, the
but
co-op
anyway,
does
Lori,
have-
if you'd like to repurpose those, you're welcome to bring them to my house, and I will get that to the woman who is bring it to the store, and I'll be happy to pass it on to her for making soup and food for those people.
And one time I was on the, I went to Reimagine Recycling to take some stuff, and Becca was there at the same time, and Becca had these white quart yogurt containers, and I took them home because I cut them up and use them as plant labels for seedlings. So I got another use out of them, but ultimately they'll be these little sticks of yogurt container.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all that feedback.
And a couple of yogurt situations. One is the co-op has yogurt in little glass things that make wonderful little drinking glasses. They're adorable. They don't stack very well. And my kid, Innes, was very enthused because they thought that they're very cute. But I said, please stop buying those because they don't stack very well. I want lots of glasses, but I don't want them to not stack. So, and then another thing is, for quite a while, I was making kefir. One answer would be make your own yogurt, if you like to eat a lot of yogurt. And it's a little involved. You need to have something that will keep it at a steady, warm temperature. One thing, if you've heard of the like sous vide machine, which is a submersible heater with a very precise thermostat. So I've made yogurt in like a big pot of water. I bought a sous vide thing because I needed to warm a particular batch of honey to get rid of some yeast that had started growing in it. And so I didn't pasteurize it, but I de-yeasted it by heating it to just 140 degrees. And so I got a sous vide to be able to do that. And then I have made yogurt in that in jars where you just need like a few tablespoons of previous yogurt, and you mix it with milk. Well, no, you heat the milk to some temperature, like 100 degrees, and then you put the, thank you, you put yogurt. Then after the milk cools, you put yogurt in it, and then you keep it at some lower temperature for a day or two, and it will yog. And that is a little inside a pot with water. So I put it, and it looks like Diane may be doing that very thing. Yeah, mine looks different than that, but it hooks on the outside of the pot and it sticks down and it keeps the water at whatever temperature you tell it. Thank you. You could be an airline flight attendant, Diane, and you do your sous vide like this.
Exactly. In fact, the reason it's out is that Bob was just making dinner and we were cooking off. These are like wonderful. I think we picked it up. Don't tell them we picked it up for like $90 at a Christmas sale. And we use it all the time for hard boiling eggs, for making meat, for everything. I haven't done it for yoga yet, but it's amazing. And this this is me in the process. This is how hard this is. This is me currently, as you watch, making my yogurt, sitting, not my yogurt, my kefir. I got the starter from Marin. And all it does is sit on my counter constantly. And I've done it where, you know, I just add milk to the whey basically. And I've had it sometimes in the summer, within one day I get new kefir, a little bit thin, or sometimes in the winter, it's like a whole week, but it just sits on my counter. Like anyone can do this.
Yeah,
Yogurt's
it's easy. It's much easier than yogurt. And people buy kefir in plastic
Never again.
bottles
Yeah.
all the time. And so this is self-sustaining. I have some frozen, some grains, but I traveled, and so I sort of fell off the wagon, and I also got very high cholesterol numbers. So I'm like reducing dairy. So, but I was using it for a long time as a yogurt substitute. I just used it where I would otherwise use yogurt, on my oatmeal or whatever, or with Indian food. And it is very easy, and one produces more grains. So it's easy to have someone give you grains. Like Diane is probably having to compost some of your grains because it just keeps making more.
No, I've been feeding the grains to my mom and to my dog for probiotic health. So
okay, good.
Don't have any
Yeah,
extras.
and it's supposed to be even better than yogurt in terms of being probiotic, because it's more than one organism, and they make these little colonies that are little grains about the size of a nurdle, only much healthier. And then you just strain it out each day or each couple days.
Yeah.
So
I
that's a great yogurt
informed-
solution.
The reason I was able to show you the sous vide cooker is because our dinner is ready, but it's been a joy, and I've put my
Yes.
contact information down, and I will do it again. And I hope to see some of you again here through PASUP, here at the salon, or here in my store, and I'll put all that information. But
Yeah.
thank you. It was a really
Thank
exciting
you
talk.
for being here and sharing your insight, and enjoy your dinner.
Yeah.
Neil did deliver me a dinner over here that I feel like I can't really eat on camera because that would be rude. When I'm hosting.
Thank goodness for our husbands that are cooking for us.
Yes, go spouses, go spice.
But anyway, seriously, I thank you there's my information and my contact information, but really engaging conversation. And once again, there's always so much more to be covered, but such a wealth of information here, and hope to see you guys again soon.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Hanukkah. It starts right now.
Happy Hogs
Started.
Watch for the Terry Pratchett
and all that good
aficionados.
stuff. Bye, guys.
So we have still, and Diane had to leave at this time, and we knew that. We still have a bunch of people we can continue discussing. There's more even that's gone by in the.
I wanted to mention two issues that
Mhm.
I've been nagging Costco about at every opportunity. One is their tendency to make a bulk pack that the only size unit you can buy of a product is multiple packages held together with something.
Mhm.
It's often shrink wrap,
Mhm.
and I'm definitely opposed to that. But then also there are these bottle carriers.
Oh,
that have
Lord.
bottlenecks are in these things so that you can pick it up by the handle. Well, lately they've started making these out of recycled plastic. So that's something, it's a use for recycled plastic, but it's not recyclable, and you're going to throw it away, and it's a danger to the necks of wildlife. So you have to cut these before you throw them away. I think they should have a bin at the exit of Costco that you drop this into, and they pop more bottles into it and put it back on the shelf.
That would be
Seems
ideal.
really obvious to me, but it's a big change in procedure for them.
Yes, East End Brewery has that kind of thing on cans. I don't know. I usually get growlers, but they do take them back to be recycled, the ones from their stuff. However, because of that danger, and I need to show a photograph that is a very, it's like everyone has seen the turtle with the straw in its nose, right?
Yeah, and the turtle caught in a flexible 6-pack holder.
Yeah, and I, this, I'm gonna share a screen here. So the first thing, if you have anything, like whether it's 6-pack rings or those things for bottles that are stiffer, I even take a pair of kitchen shears on when we have like milk or cream in a carton and it has that little plastic spout. I cut that spout, and in addition to the turtle, the wasp-waisted turtle, where's my share screen button? There's share screen. This is a great blue heron, which I photographed. It was outside of, I was at Phipps for a workshop, and it was outside the glass window. And this heron, people from the aviary and Phipps and various people were trying to catch this heron to get that ring off its nose, but they couldn't because he kept getting scared and he would fly off to a different place and then it would find him. And he died a couple days later after this. So anytime you have anything that is a circle, that makes a circle or more circles, cut it, because at least you will prevent this. Because even if you put it in the trash and it's meant to go to the landfill, or you put it in the recycling and it's meant to go to recycling, things bounce out of trucks, things get dropped, bags break. So do cut them. So this, I don't know what this was. Some could have been in some industrial part. I have no idea, but it killed this heron. And that was a beautiful bird that had a life ahead of him or her. And so let that picture replace the poor turtle with the straw in its nose, or the other turtle who is shaped like an 8, like a number 8. Something about the trash, was it you, Laura, that was talking about trash every 2 weeks and recycling every week? In someplace else than here? That would work if you have inclusive composting at a municipal level, because I think that the reason that we have, is there composting wherever that is?
There is, it's in Toronto and it's absolutely free and heavily encouraged, and they give you everything you need to do it.
Right, okay, so that would enable you to do, because I mean, I often miss a week. I've had, well, 1 year I made 1 bag of trash for the year. That was a trash bag when I lived in Ithaca, and 1 bag of trash for the year. I just realized, oh, when Neil and I were long distance, he was visiting, and I realized the last time at some point I was taking out the trash, and I realized it had been since I cleaned house before a visit that was a year earlier. Here we have a family, kid with some dietary needs that do sometimes result in more plastic, and but I've gone 3 or 4 weeks with a grocery sack sitting under the kitchen counter, because I don't, I compost, and I don't put anything noxious in it. And at the, when I take it out, and some weeks I take it out, well, actually Neil takes it out because Neil gets up early in the morning and I don't want to use a can for my little bag of trash. So I put it together and I collect stuff that might be around the house, and I go off out onto the porch and bring in the dog poop bags that might happen. And so by not being noxious, trash can be kept a long time. And it's just those odd bits of packaging that can't be recycled, and, you know, a weird plastic and metal part from something that broke or something. So but it would require composting. And as I said, I have brush pile type compost. I have many different types of compost, and I bring people's leaves off the street. Right now, the sheltered area in front of my garage is full of bags of other people's leaves that I need to spread around. So let's see. Yogurt.
Well, while you're searching, I want to mention that not owning an outdoor trash can is one of the best decisions my partner and I made when we moved in together 26 years ago. We were in a row house where we had our own yard and we could have a compost pile, but we didn't have a place to put an outdoor trash can. And so we didn't get one. And so the trash had to stay in the kitchen until trash taking out night. And that really motivates us to control the total volume of trash and the noxiousness. It's one of the reasons we eat less meat, is we don't want to have to dispose of the meat packages.
Yes, and I actually do own a bunch of big trash cans, but I never put trash in them. I put wood chips. If I get a whole load of wood chips, I need to put the wood chips in something. If I mill up a tree, I need trash cans to put the sawdust in, because then I use that on the land or in the brush pile or in the compost. I also use it for holding the leaves. Like if other people's leaves come in plastic bags, I nestle them around my composters to insulate and enable me to keep the same batch of redworms living for the last decade. And if they're in paper bags, I either spread them or I put them into my collection of mostly trash picked from the neighbor's trash cans. Like the neighbor says, "Hey, Marin, this trash can's wearing out on the bottom. You want it?" So I take it. And so I haven't bought trash cans, but I have inherited many trash cans, or trash can, somebody moves away and they just leave it. And the new people don't want it. So I put leaves in those. So I have stuff in them, but I don't, hardly ever do I put one out on the street with trash, because I don't produce enough trash, which is the reason that we have to put the trash out in the morning, because if it has anything in it that was like food packaging that isn't perfectly clean, a local dog or raccoon or something will tear it apart. What have we got? So many things. Oh, and I do have some slides from the Refillery, since she tends to not be very available at this time of
And
year.
I have one more package that to me was the real stumper in my pantry. This is, I cannot imagine what the alternative, more responsible packaging for this product would be.
Okay,
The
brainstorm.
has been the same as long as I can remember, more than 40 years. Ramen. The easy answer is, I just shouldn't eat this. It's crappy. It's not really food. But when
It's
I'm
quick.
sick and this is the only food I can make, putting that much salty water into my body gets me to drink a lot more fresh water, and it just makes me feel so much better. So we have to have our emergency food stash in the pantry. And, you know, millions of Americans, this is a staple food because
Oh
it's
yeah,
so cheap.
Students too.
But it's got
Is it in a
plastic
plastic tray
packet.
inside that? There's
No.
there's the bag and then it's no tray.
The noodle cake is inside this plastic envelope, and then there's a little plastic
The little
foil
packet.
that you tear open. That's the seasoning. And then some varieties of ramen come with 2 of those packets that are one's an oily, one's a powdery. But this is the simple kind of powder.
Well, I mean, a lot of places where we use plastic in the old days would have been wax paper. So bringing wax paper back might be a thing. And having a cardboard box that has 10 of them, and they're each in a wax paper sleeve. That doesn't deal with the packet, but the packet is at least much smaller, so you've reduced it some. The whole packets and sachets, especially in developing countries where people can't afford a bottle of shampoo, so they get a sachet because that's how much they can afford, and they get one shampoo out of it, and then there's this little non-recyclable piece of crap. That the seasoning, however, maybe that same company could sell the seasoning in a little jar that lasts for the next 50 ramen packets. So
I
there could
would
be a cardboard box with wax paper sleeves and sell the seasoning separately in bulk, which is also like, what are a lot of the bottles that people buy? A lot of the bottles that people buy are soda. And they buy it because they like fizziness, and they buy it because they like the flavor of that soda. And when you have a soda fountain at a restaurant or whatever, it has a carbonation device. So the input is water and probably a metal canister of carbon dioxide or something. I don't know how they do it. Does anybody here have one of those soda stream machines? How does that work? How does it get fizzy? So what I'm suggesting is that Coca-Cola or whoever sell the syrup the same way as they do to restaurants, and then have people, and that has their special Coca-Cola flavor or Sprite or whatever, and sell that in a bottle, and then, which you would just keep in your fridge, or it's probably so full of sugar that it could live on the shelf. And people would have, does anybody here have a soda stream machine? I know people who have them, but I don't know.
And my husband does, but I haven't used it myself.
Who we still have. Anyway, I don't know exactly how that works. The question is, do you need to buy a little canister? Like a cream whipper has a little whippet.
You know what would be even simpler with soda? If places that have a soda fountain accessible to the consumer, like many convenience stores and fast food restaurants,
and just
they
refill
would
your
give you
bottle.
the option of buying a bottle to put it in with a screw-on cap and save it for later, instead of putting it in a paper cup.
Yeah.
Then, you could go and make your bottles of soda for the week, and they keep the bubbles for several days.
Yeah, I know that, like, and also a tip. I don't like beer, but Neil likes beer and drinks some amount of beer, and pretty regularly. And it used to be that for sustainability salons, a potluck with 50 to 100 people, I would buy a bunch of growlers, which are half-gallon jugs that refill at the place. And then, but for Neil's own personal consumption, we would get cases of bottles at a local beer store. Because for those of you outside of Pennsylvania, we have to go to a beer store for beer. And they're usually sell only by the case. You could go to a bar and get a 6-pack maybe, but you'd get a case at the beer store. Anyway, so we would do that. But then a few times went where we had a salon and there was leftover beer, but Neil was leaving on a trip, so he wouldn't even start drinking the leftovers until a week later, and it was fine. And now we just get the growlers. So when Neil's low on beer, one of us will go to the East End with a couple of growlers. He'll pick 2 kinds that he wants from that week from the local brewery, and I'll refill them. For a while during the pandemic, they weren't doing that, but then they went back to doing it, thankfully. And that's just the number of bottles that didn't have to go off and get recycled and melted down is so better.
Soda could be done that way too.
And so, yeah, so carbon dioxide doesn't, it's not flat completely. I don't know. I'm not a beer drinker, so, and Neil is over there. Neil! I'm going to ask Neil if it's flat by the time he finishes the jars, and you guys can talk. He says, no, it is not flat. It is still fizzy by the time he finishes it. So there's no reason soda isn't, and people, they buy 2-liter soda bottles just for economy because it's cheaper than a bunch of little bottles.
But you could take your metal bottle back to the store and fill it. The technology exists with soda fountains. It's just a matter of them letting you refill your reusable container. The other issue with Costco that I was going to mention when we got sidetracked on the heron they give out the free samples. And sometimes those are in little cardboard dishes. Sometimes they're in little plastic dishes. Sometimes they give you a spoon or a fork. They could have reusable dishes for those, and they could have a bin for you to put them in, and they could wash them somewhere.
Or they could
But-
train people to have a bag in there. Like I have a cup in my computer bag that I go around to events with. Not so much now, but starting to happen again. I have a plate and a cup and a fork. And the plate and the cup are plastic, so they're not going to break, but they're permanent plastic. They're old plastic, so you might not be happy about that. But like IKEA kid cups from 20 years ago, and IKEA kid plates and a metal fork. And so I'm always ready and don't have to, if there's food at an event I'm at, I can eat it without feeling guilty. And
But because
I
of
have
that
it in
FDA
my
regulation-
shopping bags too. And I have gotten samples in my cups, that
okay.
I had with me.
Did they make you serve it yourself?
No, they
Because
just
that
poured it into my
FDA
thing.
regulation,
There may be, well, the people that I don't go to Costco, so I don't actually have that many
Right.
opportunities, but I have done it.
typically
I have
the
had people,
sample person is preparing a tray of individually served samples, and they set that one aside and they start making the next tray.
they
and
also
really
get paid
strict
based on how
rules.
many samples they give out, and it's calculated how many samples they give out by how many containers they went through. So
probably-
it's not something that the individual server, they may be enthusiastic from an environmental standpoint, but they may be wistful or they may quietly throw away a thing.
Yeah, so
like
I
did
their
get
haven't
them to
little
read
switch
about
to-
that recently.
I did
but
get them to switch to those little cupcake kind of containers instead. That
the
are at
little
least
paper
more
food and
biodegradable.
paper containers.
I'm pretty sure I got them to do that. I was lobbying them like crazy. And it frustrates me when occasionally I see some go back that don't need to. So I may be dropping something in there again, but I think that's an example of work.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing.
Yeah,
Well,
I've
if they
certainly
have
seen
just-
samples in little tiny paper cups, like nuts or something.
If they've generally switched over to paper and you just occasionally see the plastic, there may be supply chain issues there. But yeah, I nagged about this several times in the past and I wasn't seeing any change. And now it's just, in the last 2.5 years, I haven't gone in Costco without a mask. So I'm not eating any samples anyway.
Mhm. I'll
but,
pull down my mask to have a sample.
Yeah, yeah, because
But-
I haven't washed my hands. I mean, I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about that before
Mhm.
pandemic. I was taking my kids to Costco and I knew they hadn't washed their hands and they're eating samples and I was always kind of worried about that.
Mhm.
So it's just easier not to take them. But on the other hand, it's sometimes those samples are really yummy and that's a way to try something if you're not sure if you would like it. So before you buy
Yep.
the 6 pound.
Okay, and I think we covered a lot of the stuff in the chat. There's another, Anne is also a construction junction aficionado, and goes to Michael's. Oh, we should connect. I'm not sure if Anne is not still here anymore, but I will now. I know, aha, because I've collected bags of these things because my kid who doesn't eat enough does enjoy. And mostly because of not enjoying food, does enjoy a lot of Asian snacks and dumplings and buns and pancakes and scallion pancakes and things from the Panda grocery in Squirrel Hill. So much damn packaging. And so I've been saving the trays. It's like, why couldn't you just have at least, a bag with 4 pancakes in it instead of a bag with a tray with 4 pancakes in it, and little trays for the buns that have little compartments for each bun. And it's like, or why? I mean, it would be nice if Innis would put up with homemade versions of those things, but that isn't happening anytime soon. So, so I've been saving them for Michael's, but they are starting to build up.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have a temperamental about food teenager who's currently in the bottom 1% of BMI. So I am trying to buy the things that he'll
Innis
eat.
is way lower than that.
Packaging is,
Innis fell off the bottom of the chart.
We're at the
So-
point now where we have to go to an extra doctor appointment to talk about this specifically. And
Yeah.
so,
So
Yeah.
anyway, rather than talk about our kids, we will go back to, oh, and if people would like to see a little tour of the Refillery, I do have the slides that
I would like to see.
that Larissa sent me. I also did a little PowerPoint last time on slides that I took, but that was a year ago, so the store's a little different now. And so I'll show her slides. Also, I have slides from Daphne Chan, who is the polymer chemist, who, in case people had questions about that, I could address, and perhaps we'll talk about it in greater detail with all the pros and the cons at a future salon. But if anybody was curious about that, I have info. So let's go. I think where's my share screen? And so, yes, here is Larissa's slides. They're just in a PDF. So let me get the chat out of the way. This is Pittsburgh's first refill and zero waste store. It was just opening last year around this time. It's in Squirrel Hill, right on the in the same block as Giant Eagle. If you're looking at Giant Eagle from Murray Avenue, it is to your right in a storefront right over toward the corner. And this is just some slides from another talk that she gave. So trying to reduce single-use packaging. So they have scales, they have bulk containers. I know that some laundry soap that I bought there, it was powdered laundry detergent, was locally made. So she had tubs and she just took them to the place where it was made and they filled the tubs. So there was like no packaging except this tub that got, refilled, and the jars that got refilled that people would put it in. It wasn't cheap, but it was local and it was packaging free. So they're open every day but Monday to Sunday. I think that means 7 days a week. And so they have some specialized containers that you could buy, but they also have this whole shelf of donated containers that people bring in. And I have brought in some jars as well as used some jars. And what do they have? Skincare, personal care stuff, home essentials, and so laundry soap and cleaning sprays and dish soap and hand soap and skincare and shampoo and all that kind of stuff. And they work with manufacturers of the substances that they can, if they are getting big containers, it's not like the 5-pound bag of coffee. It is the something that they can send back and the manufacturer will refill. So that is awesome. And they only partner with companies that offer a closed loop system. So here's a little shot of the store. And it varies what the layout is. The picture that I used for this event was from their store last year, and now it's got a different layout. But anyway, that's the Refillery. And there's stuff going on around the holidays, so they couldn't join us. So shall we call it a wrap? If people want to talk more, it has been wonderful. Thanks for all of the contributions. Great to have a couple of new faces. And I think my sister in Massachusetts did not make it, but we do have New Mexico and someplace else in the Pacific, and somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, great to meet you, John and Willow. And thanks to Bill for connecting us. And so thank you all for coming. And the next salon, I believe, will be on in January. I have the date. Oh, and there's a petition to sign. Oh, darn, I didn't give you the petition. Everyone here should sign this petition. If you're still here, you should sign it. I did include it in the Marin's List entry. And it's a petition to stop an ill-considered, here it is, development project in Hazelwood on a turn a forested slope into like 60 condos or something. And go to that petition and sign it, put it in the chat. And whether or not you live in Hazelwood, because it affects climate, it affects flooding, not just in that community, but elsewhere. When you destroy a slope, there's already some slopes shifting, and they want to cut down all the trees and put in little buildings. It's terrible. Okay, so thank you all for coming and participating and bringing your ideas. And I hope we can take these ideas and further them. We got a new person for the steering committee, hopefully, and we will. Oh, I was going to tell you the date of the next salon, which is there in, and it's going to be reflections on the COP27 climate summit and possibly other climate related things. And I have too many windows open on my screen. A couple weeks in. Anyway, sometime in mid to late January. The date is in the Marin's List entry. Sort of the 22nd. Ah, yes, the 22nd.
Okay.
Of January will be the next salon, and it'll be around climate issues and the COP27. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all
Thanks
for
for-
coming, and good night.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye.